Good afternoon, and welcome to the next edition of the Next Gen Genealogy Network Youth Committee Hangout. My name is Shannon Combs Bennett, and I am the Youth Chair for Next Gen. Today, we are going to talk about planning summer family history trips with your kids or your other family members who you never know. You might drag them along and you have to go on an excursion, right? Today, we have two panelists joining us who are both members of NextGen. Let's start with Sherry. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I am Sherry Hudson Passy. I blog with Carolina Girl Genealogy, and I am a member of NextGen.
Great. Good to have you here. How about you, Valerie?
I'm Valerie Eichler-Lair. I live in southern Minnesota and I'm a member of NextGen, and I'm looking forward to getting youth engaged. It has been something that I've been wanting to do for many years, and I'm excited to be a part of the youth committee.
Fantastic. We're glad to have you, and so glad that both of you have joined NextGen. You guys are great. Love to have you here. It's not just me talking to the screen today. Unfortunately, our guest panelist, Terry O'Connell, was unable to make it at the last minute due to a family situation. She said she would try to join us in a little bit, so if there's a fourth button that appears along the bottom of the screen, that's who she is. But let's get started. So have you guys ever taken any of your kids or your family on a vacation that turned into a genealogy outing?
I haven't taken them on a vacation that's turned into one. I have been able to take my kids onto to trips as far as going to cemeteries and showing them family homes and things like that. But I haven't done a vacation yet.
How about you, Valerie?
Well, all of our family vacations were based around genealogy.
Good for
it,
you.
Cool, good.
it was forced upon, and so at least once a year, usually during the summer, we would spend anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks going back home, which is now where I live. At the time, it was we were in Colorado, but one specific family vacation that wasn't coming to a home or roots was to Montana. We were doing a family vacation to Thermopolis, Wyoming, which ended up being the most awesome family vacation ever. And since we were so close, we went up to Montana, and my son got to meet an author of a book that I had found in a garage sale that ended up being his third cousin, one generation removed.
Oh, very cool.
Mm.
Yeah, my father's a historian, so every trip was an excuse to have an educational lesson. Um, I can't necessarily say that when I was little, we moved away. Most people know I'm originally from Indiana, and that we moved away when I was a little kid. And then every summer I would go back home and see my grandmothers would take me away for the summer, basically. It was grandma camp. And so I guess that could be considered a form of summertime family history vacation because we had reunions and met with cousins, and they always took me around to different places every summer and showed me the family homestead, and this is where such and such happened. This is where so and so was born, and but it was a great way to connect and learn a little bit about my history through a fun way. But do you guys think that it's I know that there are some parents out there that I have talked to who are genealogists who are trying to actually plan vacations where they can insert family history and genealogy into them. Um, I kind of do more of the impromptu, hey, we're here, and hey, I remember reading this, and
Right,
doing
right.
connections that way. But can you guys see a benefit, or do you think that that's something that uh, you think people should encourage more, actually planning a trip instead of just doing the
I
impromptu?
I have a friend actually in my genealogy club here in Myrtle Beach who has done that type of thing every year for many, many years. She actually plans a family reunion. They plan where they're going. For instance,
Mhm.
this year they are going to do some civil. They're going to go to Gettysburg,
Oh,
and
wow.
she has planned out where they're going to meet, where they're going to stay, what relatives fought in that battle,
Hmm.
And they do this every year, and they make T-shirts, and it says,
Oh,
"Who do we think
cool.
we are?" And on the back, it has the list of all the places that they're going. And
Oh,
she says that
wow.
she's engaged her grandchildren by looking up all the ghost stories from the area, and that's what brings them in and gets them interested. And then they'll start listening to the other stories, to the family stories. So I thought that's so wonderful. They've been doing it for years.
That's such a fantastic idea.
Isn't
Do
that a
you do
great
anything like
idea?
that? Do you know anything like that, Valerie?
Well, not so much with the t-shirts, but because our planned, all of our vacations were planned, because we, had to plan around vacation time from work
Hmm.
and so forth, and school and so forth. So they were planned. What was impromptu is once we got to the location, it's like, oh, okay. Well, that what I heard or saw about is right over there. Let's go over there. But usually it was most of it was planned, and of course, every other year was one of our family reunions, and so that's when we got the T-shirts, and it was really cool because they'd have the names of the main people and who you were directly related to had little orange dots around that. It was a
Oh,
four-leaf clover,
oh
and
wow.
so you knew by from my son who was little to all the adults who they belonged to or what family. And but we would plan because I needed to know what to bring, and the cemetery trips and so forth. So
Sorry, that's my phone. Keep talking. I'm going to turn it.
I'm glad I have mine on mute and in the other room. um, that's I'm so glad it's not me. um,
No,
so
nobody ever calls me during the daytime. It's like, what the heck?
So I think it would be fun to do an impromptu thing, but I'm more too organized and too, I guess, OCD to, I have to have a set schedule, and that way too I can plan the research and the planning of the rest of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I'm guilty of being a little of an over planner. Um, I there have been one too many times where my parents have wanted to, or my husband has wanted to go somewhere and do something and be spontaneous, and I've like got the itinerary, and he's like, "Really, really?" I'm like, "Yes, this is what we're gonna do, and this is when we're gonna do it, and this is how we're gonna see it." And
Yeah, I
oh,
do that too.
okay. I'm so glad that I'm not alone. But
But
I
your
have.
kids get used to that though, because when they're little anyway, they're used to a schedule.
Mhm.
And my son to this day is still that way. Maybe in less areas than in some, but they're used to that. They were weaned on a schedule, so to speak. So I think it helps them because then they know what's going to happen and what's going to go on, a little bit of it. But I know I didn't really like surprises when I was younger, and so that's how I kind of approach it. But I think it would be great if you're in that situation and you love to do those impromptu surprise things with the kids, go for it. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that parents and anybody who has to deal with children realizes very quickly that each one is a different and unique person, and some have to have a schedule, and some are okay with not
Right.
having one,
Hmm.
and you have to, take it in stride, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I have to say, I'm jealous about the t-shirts. I attended family reunions for years and never got a t-shirt. I feel a little gypped here.
I already have the T-shirt for this year's reunion that we're ready to get 2 years ago because it's every other year. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Wow, that's really cool.
and my son has his because it is planned for him to attend.
You will attend or else.
Yeah.
So, when I take my kids places, and especially if I figure out along the way, living in Virginia, there's a lot of history, obviously,
Mhm.
here. And lucky for me, both of my kids really enjoy history and enjoy going out and hiking on the battlefields and the various, like Williamsburg and going to Mount Vernon and Montpelier and Monticello and all the different places where you can just, go hiking and see what it was like when the
Mm-hmm.
presidents lived there or in the colonial days. Um, so it's not, on the rare occasion I have to figure out ways to keep them engaged when either the item, starts going over their head or
Right.
starts they don't really understand, because I have one who's in lower elementary school and then I have a middle schooler. So I'm talking to
Mm-hmm.
two
Oh.
vast different age groups here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have ways that I try to keep my kids engaged with what we're seeing, and that's usually by bringing in family history, because
Right.
with my oldest, if I can convince him how it was, even if it's something slight like this, whatever event happened here affected our family in X way, that's usually enough to keep them involved. But do you guys have any tips or tricks on how, when you're out visiting places or planning a family history excursion, how you keep your kids engaged and involved in what's happening?
I think that is the best way, is to come up with some kind of way for them to connect with family, or just an interesting story that may have happened there. I know that when I was a kid, my dad was in the Air Force and we went a lot of different places. And everywhere we went, we had to do the history tour wherever we were because he loves history. And I would just get really bored. But one day we were living in England and I started reading some historical fiction novels. And it started clicking as we go to these castles and these, places. Oh my gosh, these things happened here. And I started thinking about the people that lived there. And that's when it clicked for me that there was real people involved in this. And so I've
Hmm.
tried to do that with my kids, is before we go somewhere, we talk about who lived there and what, especially if there was family, what kind of experiences they had. And that seems to help a lot.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I can see that. That goes along with the making history real. My
Right.
young history should always be fun,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
actually, when the realization that these were real people and real
Mm-hmm.
things that happened, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
just on the page or in the papers.
Right.
um,
Right.
I think that in some instances some kids really connect to that. um,
Mm-hmm.
my oldest is right now, actually. Yeah, he might be on his way back. He went down to Charlottesville today to the University of Virginia. He participated in a program called A Journey Through the Hollowed Grounds. Have you guys heard about that project before?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm, no.
It's actually a program through the National Park Service, where it's
Mm-hmm.
a path from Virginia up to Gettysburg of Civil War battlefields. The National Park Service
Oh.
has they recruited the help of local middle schoolers who live near or on the different battlefields to help
Mm-hmm.
tell a story about that battle.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
my son's middle school is less than half a mile, maybe a mile, from the Wilderness Battlefield. If you're familiar with the Civil War, it was a really bad battle, really
Mm.
bad. We just celebrated the 150th anniversary for it. So as these battles come down from Pennsylvania through Virginia on this journey through the hollowed ground, they are going and creating movies. And my son participated in making, with his seventh grade class, a movie about a one
Oh, that's
specific
wonderful.
item that happened on this battlefield, a historic point. And talk about getting 300 kids engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Going out to the battlefield and traipsing around on it and learning history. And a lot of them have, their families are from Orange County. They are
Uh-huh.
from here. They know what that means. They had probably ancestors who fought and lived here and died here. And to a lot of them, my son told me it was a very emotional. Well, today
Oh, I'm
was the
sure.
viewing. Yeah, today was the viewing of their
Mm.
movie that they made down at UVA. So, but talk about a great way to get other kids involved. I think if I remember correctly, off the top of my head, it's nearly a dozen different battlefields that have taken these middle schoolers and created these short little movies. And taking your
Wow.
kids to see these,
Wow.
because it's other kids telling
Other
their
kids.
points of view about a historical
Mm-hmm.
event, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's fantastic.
Oh, cool.
That is
Yeah.
great.
We well, we didn't have that when we lived in Colorado. um,
Mm-mm.
but I want to say my son was either in third or fourth grade, and they had to pick a a Colorado character.
Hmm.
And so, of course, the one that my son chose, I had to do all the research and had him, who was this person? How did he dress? What did he look like? Um, and he did a wonderful job down to the costume and the whole bit. And they had to present that character in front of the whole, it was either third or fourth grade class, all of them.
Oh, wow.
And so part of it was well, let's go to the location in Colorado where, like my son said, where this dude lived and where it was. And so that was, it was unplanned yet planned type of thing. Well, this is where it was, let's go. And it was so interesting because then it really put that character, that person, to
Hmm.
life. And on other occasions, coming to southern Minnesota, every summer for me to do research and him to help, I would along the way have my photos so I could show them, this is what this person looked like. This is your great 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 grandfather, and then this other one who served in the Civil War, and he was only
Right.
5'4".
Okay.
You could show that to him as you're taking them places, or so it really helped to have the photographs back then.
Oh yeah, I can totally
Hmm.
see that. And I think you picked on another point that I want to make sure people realize is if you want your kids to have fun on a genealogy family history excursion, maybe you should let them pick the subject.
Really
Ah.
good idea.
I mean,
Really good idea.
if it's something that you have researched together, I mean, even if it's not, even if they say, I just want to go see X town, or I heard about this interesting museum, you, as the genealogist, could go and do some research and see if you could figure out something from the social history of the area
Mhm.
to somehow how it might have affected your family history and be able to, have a discussion about it afterwards.
Hmm. Well, one trip
Mhm.
was to a family outing, was a day trip to Cripple Creek, Colorado.
Hmm.
And it was before the casinos went in, gambling. And as it turned out, it wasn't pre-planned. It was just a let's go here for the day. And there's so much history in that area. And then to
Right.
see what, the actual bank would have looked like at the time, and the general store. I mean, he was running, from storefront to storefront. And then when we got to the one building that actually was the jail, and he was put behind bars. I mean, you talk about engaged. I mean, it was right there. And, it's a mining area too. So, and then as it turned out, his babysitter at the time used to work in one of the stores and had ancestors there. And so we got into that afterwards. So even though I wasn't able to look at specific things before we went, oh yeah, within a day or so after we got back, then that's when we're looking at to what the history was of the area and who was there, even though we didn't have family there, but it really,
Mhm.
brought things to life. So yeah, you can do it both from both angles.
Right. Do you do that too, Sherry?
I do. I do. I try really hard. I was, I was, we haven't lived back home for a few years. We were out west, and so it was kind of hard to do actual family history things because we weren't near anything. But taking them to historical places and talking about people that lived in the areas where we were, we would do that. And of course, some were interested and some were the eye roll. But that's just the way it's going to be. Some are going to be interested, and no matter how hard you try, some of them they're just not.
Right. And that's like I said, it kind of goes back with everybody's different because there are a lot of
Mhm.
adults who look at us like we're crazy too.
That's
So,
true. That is true. That is very true.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, not all adults think we're sane people, and neither do kids. So it's all right. The-
And one of the rules was too, um, of course, there wasn't a cell phone back then, but it's leave your Game Boy at home.
Mhm.
no, you're not going to sit in the car and do that. You're going to look at the scenery, and we're going to, be that kind of thing, and sing songs or tell stories or play the alphabet game, whatever. But, the Game Boy, and so, of course, now would be the phone and iPad and whatever stays home.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, me no mom, but oh well. And I think he appreciated that too.
Yeah. Unconnecting the husband from the phone is almost as hard as unconnecting my kids. Just the nature of it, right? Um, so we've kind of talked about a lot of different things, but is there anything in particular you think that parents or it doesn't it doesn't necessarily have to be parents, but people who are interested in um, taking even nieces or nephews or scouting troops or whomever else might come into contact with kids, creating a family history vacation for them. Are there any other key points you think they should keep in mind?
Oh my gosh.
I know it's a large question.
Yeah. Well, as far excuse me, as far as scouts, my son wasn't involved in scouts, but I was shortly after I got into genealogy as far as reviewing for their badge.
Hmm.
And I was the one of the go-to contact people there. And I would suggest, where they should go and what they should do when they get there, and then leave a little bit, as a surprise kind of thing. But get out of the building. Get and do the real thing, and then either if it is planned, the troop leader has planned it, um, for a library to do some of the preliminary research, because that's part of the badge too. You had to do some research.
Right.
And even if your family wasn't there, like we lived in Colorado and we didn't have ancestors there, but we still did something that was related to family history all the time. And because we lived in near the Air Force Academy, I had told the scout leader, because I did this with my son, there alongside the freeway is an overlook, and it overlooks the Air Force Academy, and there's a tombstone there. And I'll never forget taking my son there because I wanted a sample that wasn't my family related, it was something else, and I wanted to use different, colors to do a tombstone rubbing. And so he's there helping me because he knows how to do this, even though he was like 6. And so people had driven up and parked their car, and they're looking at us. And and my son just, kids say the darndest things, said, "Well, don't you know we're doing a tombstone rubbing?"
That's cute.
I cracked up, but that way it was something that the scouts could do, and then you could bring in history of the area, and of course the Air Force Academy. Oh my gosh, huge
Right.
history there, and so they took my suggestions and did that, even though I wasn't personally involved with the child in scouts, but
Well,
you
at
could,
least they listened.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I would be
So
interested in getting the schools in my area more involved. And I don't know how I'd go about, saying, y'all need to be doing something more hands-on. I do know that one of the high schools, unfortunately not the one that my children go to, but one of the high schools actually works with the Historical Society in our county, and he takes a group, the man in charge takes a group of youth out, and they clean up the cemeteries, and they have been cleaning up these old abandoned cemeteries every year. So he takes one group every year and does it. And so that's a really wonderful thing, but it needs to expand more into other schools. And I'm
mhm.
not quite sure how to go about, suggesting that they do things like that. I guess one teacher at a time, one child at a time in a classroom.
Yeah, one teacher, one child. Try to get if you know any teachers, try to get them to ask them, what the protocols are. We talked about this a little
Hmm.
bit at the general meeting we had a couple weeks ago, and one of the things I brought up and that Elise also countered with and a couple other people is it really depends on your school district. Some school districts are
Hmm.
much stricter about who are allowed to come into their classrooms.
Come in.
Yeah, other
Hmm.
ones it's like, sure, you're the parent, come on in.
Come
whereas
on
mine,
in.
and well, I've my oldest, like I said, is now in middle school. So when he first started in like kindergarten through probably first, second
Mhm.
grade, it was sure, you're the parent. Come on in,
Right.
chaperone, do this, do that.
Right.
And now, what, 6, 7 years later, um, it's we have to have a full background check and
Absolutely.
have to be
Mm,
approved by the sheriff's
Mhm.
department in the county and have to do this and have to do that and a whole bunch of stuff. And that's just to volunteer.
mm,
That's not to, actually work with any
Wow.
kids. So it's
Wow.
important to know which school district, that type of thing.
Sure.
But the
Mhm.
other thing, and I've been kind of thinking about this, is you could always try to get involved with like your local parks department or your local
Mhm.
library
Mhm.
and try to do workshops or summer programs or once a month type things. See if they'll let
Sure.
you. Uh,
Sure.
Always keep in mind that it'll start small and eventually grow, but that's
Right.
another way. And
That's a
especially if
great
you could, yeah,
idea.
especially if you get the parents involved and then they can think of other things.
Mhm.
So that would be a way that you could work on that too.
Sure. That's a great idea.
and two, that's good points that you brought up because now not having a grade school age child, high school or whatever, um, he's in his own career and working and a young adult. So um, I don't I don't know how to approach the school district except for it just popped a light bulb on that my husband's niece is they work at the school, and me already been involved with community ed through this high school in teaching a couple of genealogy classes. There's my contacts,
Yep.
there's how I can get,
Sure.
okay, what are their policies, um, and that kind of thing, and getting them out. I would love to take them out, cemetery tripping, or the old churches, or there's so much
Mhm.
history in this area, as well, but not like not like the battlefields where you are.
Yeah.
But maybe we can plan a family
Yeah.
vacation there. So um, but that's what I'm trying to gather up a plan,
Hmm.
and but mainly so people can hear us say, well, this is what we're also trying to do, but this is what
Mhm.
you can do in your area.
Right.
Right.
Well, there's also career day too.
Hmm.
Sometimes we forget when they've got, the lawyers and all those people coming in. It's just as important what we do. And so career day is a good time to go in and talk to the kids too.
Yeah, maybe bring anti-genealogist.
That would work.
Guess who I'm going to make phone calls to in the next few days before
Oh,
school ends.
oh, that's funny.
Right.
Oh.
So here's another thing to think about since we're talking about taking smaller people. Not that I don't want to call them kids. I get dirty looks from my teenager when I call him a kid still. But
Right.
hey, he's not home, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's right.
I do a lot of okay, so everyone knows now that I am a little OCD and I do a lot of itineraries and planning because I have to have at least a semblance of order in my life, even if I throw it out the window when I get there. But one of the things I do is when I know we're going to some place, I go out online and see if they have any like kids activities or a kids portion of the website. Because a lot of
Mhm.
the places, especially in this area, seeing as I'm not very far from DC or Williamsburg or a lot of the larger touristy
Mhm.
attractions here in Virginia, they tend to have separate pages off of their website that are just dedicated to kid-friendly activities at those sites,
Mhm.
which have come in handy more than once because there's like on certain days there's specific entertainment for them, or they have like
Okay.
scavenger hunts they can do on the site, or
Oh, okay.
fun facts for kids to know like before they get there that they can read about so when
Mhm.
they're prepared for what they're going to go see. Um, so it's a lot of fun. I didn't know if maybe this is just a strange historic place phenomenon, but have you guys encountered anything like I mentioned Williamsburg? They have a fantastic kids section. So does Jamestown and Yorktown, Montpelier, um,
Mhm.
Monticello, which is Thomas Jefferson's
Mhm.
home. Washington, D.C., there's an entire travel guide on seeing D.C. with children. So if you
Mm,
go to your local bookstore and go to the travel guide section, you can find visiting, Washington, D.C. with kids, and it's all
Mhm.
of the kids stuff that you can do there.
Ah,
So do you
well,
guys
we
have
always
anything like that?
we plan this one particular trip to Wyoming and stuff. I went online and looked up what does the hotel have before we make any reservations at the hotel. What kid friendly, and of course they all have the indoor playground and that kind of thing, and the pool and so forth. But most importantly is what other things are in the area. Um, and so I did that because of course we're not going to stay in a place that's not kid friendly, number
Right.
one, and to have activities for him at that point in time, and of course age appropriate. But
mhm.
the water slides and up in Thermopolis, they were all different temperatures, like warm to hot to cool, and so I saw all this, and that's really good. I didn't even think about other places to do that for. Um, but you certainly could, or certainly should try. Um, it again, you might find a website that doesn't have that information, but you can sure call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we even found on the way, because we took the family dog, and realized part way that no, she's not going to make it. So we got a doggy hotel part way through, and that was traumatic because I didn't have time to research about it. So but yeah, and to bring that kind of stuff with you so that they can look at it on the way or talk about it on the way,
Mhm.
that kind of thing too. And it's funny because you could just mention a couple of words and he wouldn't say anything, and you could tell that they were thinking. The cogwheels were moving, and then on the other hand, and it's like, oh yeah, and then they were just nonstop. We can do this, we can do that, or can we go here, and it really helps to have that already pre-planned. But again, you thought you were OCD? Oh, you met your mom. Does your kids have their closet color coordinated too, like mine? Yes.
You, my mother is I get it. The fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, but that's what makes my mother is a surgeon, and it makes her a very good surgeon because she's like
Oh.
that. Um, but occasionally, I am reminded by her that you don't get to pick what you're OCD about because
Oh.
while I do have tendencies, and there are certain things that have to be a certain way, and I must do them certain ways. And unfortunately, my children have picked up those habits. There are at times where I look at the kitchen and I'm like, yeah, I can wait.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I am not totally over the edge.
Let's go on a history excursion today. Forget the dishes.
That's right.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
What about
Uh-huh.
you, Sherry?
I was thinking about some of the museums and places that we've been to that do have scavenger hunts for the kids and things like that. One of them that has a really good one is the Church History Museum in Salt Lake City. That's got a fantastic scavenger hunt, children's room where they can go do all sorts of activities.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, my son used to live right outside of Richmond until a couple of years ago, and
Oh, wow.
he was forever taking his children to all the museums, and they're little, little. I mean,
Hmm.
he's got toddlers. His oldest is just turned 11, but he would do that. He would look at where they were going and talk to the kids about it, let them know why and where and what went on there. And those kids would go through those museums and they'd just be quiet and they would enjoy themselves and have a really good time. So I really do think preparation is the key when you're
Hmm.
taking them somewhere. Preparation is definitely the key. Instead of just, okay, we're stopping to this one, now we're going to this one, and they're like, oh, another museum.
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah.
feel that way about the castles in England when my parents would drag us around. I'd be like, not another castle.
You know that line has been said to me My mother was stationed in Germany when I was in college, and
Uh-huh.
she saved up leave and took a month off right before she came back to the States. And my now
Mm-hmm.
husband, then boyfriend, and I flew over there and spent a month, the month of June, driving. We drove from Germany to Paris, took the channel, the hovercraft over from Calais to Dover, and then drove.
Uh-huh.
England,
Uh-huh.
Ireland, Scotland, Wales, did the whole island.
Right.
And my mother, by about day 21, when we were at Stirling Castle, she's like, I don't want to see another
Oh,
flipping castle.
you
I
guys are
can't do
tough
another
looking all
castle.
the same. It's like one more iron, one more suit of iron. I do not want to see it. I don't want to see another night. I just don't want to see it.
Yeah, and what's bad now is we talk about it because I took a lot, actually film pictures, didn't have digital cameras back then.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
periodically, my kids will get out the photo albums and they're like, "What's this castle?" And I'm like, I don't remember.
I
It
don't
they
remember.
all kind of blended together after like the sixth one.
See, now I would give anything to go back
Oh, I
and see
know.
them.
Yeah.
Wish I'd appreciated it more when I was there, but I'd had it. When I was 16, I'd had it.
Yeah, I get that. So we've brought up scavenger hunts a couple times, and I didn't know what you guys thought about this, but it might be interesting, especially if there's any creative or ingenious people listening to this today. But what about creating family scavenger hunts?
Hmm.
So if you're going someplace or to a reunion or to
Mhm.
a outing that has significance to your family. What do you think
Mhm.
about creating a personalized or individual scavenger hunt for your kids to do, especially if you think it might help them be more engaged and have a fun time?
I think that's a
I think
great
that'd be a
idea.
great idea.
Well,
Mhm.
hey,
Definitely, definitely. That's something that I can bring up to the reunion committee for this year.
Yes.
Um, okay, forget the bubbles. Let's go, scavenger hunt. Well, it brings a new idea, a new suggestion
Sure.
and so forth. So, by all means, I mean, I loved scavenger hunts when I was little, and and of course, every weekend was a family, some kind of family history trip coming up from Iowa into Minnesota to go to my grandma's or my aunt's farm, and and hearing all the stories and what went on when they were little, how they did stuff, and it's like, Grandma, how did you live without a microwave? My gosh. But
Mhm. Mhm.
to live it then, and so you and my thing now is tell your children and write it down, whether it's part of a planned family vacation or not, but especially during a planned, thing like we're talking about, is
Mhm.
write those things down, because when you're gone, that memory may be gone.
It's gonna be gone. I was just
Um,
thinking, wouldn't it be fun to do something like The Amazing Race, where you could split them up
mm,
into different teams and have them go to
mhm.
different places, and they have to do something while they're there that had something to do with that area. They have to maybe have a butter churn, they have to do
Yeah,
whatever it may be, and then
exactly.
keep going. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then two is like, there were seven. This family reunion is based on the children of the generation back where they had seven children. So each of the
Hmm.
descendants of those seven children, mix them up. You go with
Hmm.
this aunt or uncle, and you go with this aunt and uncle instead of their favorite, and it kind of gets
Right.
them to know their other cousins too,
Hmm.
and become involved with them and into smaller groups. So, and you can maybe, if anyone's listening and they have a very competitive family, then have, you know rewards or awards,
Right.
something like that, and like the most, if you get everything on the scavenger hunt, then
Hmm.
you get, a tablet or or something like that, and that can come out of the family
Oh,
reunion fund. It's like, well, yeah, I'm thinking big, no, I want to win the award. You pay for my trip to Salt Lake. So,
sounds good. Sounds good.
so. Whoops, we lost your audio,
Did,
Shannon.
did we lose Shannon?
I'm here.
There, there you
There you
Okay,
go.
go.
okay.
My button got pushed somehow. I'm not sure how.
Ah,
There you go. You're back.
But what I was saying was it would be really nice, in addition to, like an item scavenger hunt, is maybe you could
mhm,
also throw in some uh, interviews, like ask
mm,
leading questions, like who was the person that
yes,
did this, or
yes.
find out what so and so's favorite ice cream is, or ask
Mhm,
questions, because that's another way that these kids, while they're on a history excursion, can learn more about their
right.
genealogy and their past.
Hmm.
Yes.
Another activity based on that for the family reunion or for a family trip is when you're all gathered together. You're talking that there's four left. There's probably your grandpa. Well, then there's, two aunts and an uncle. Go and ask them a question.
Hmm.
Make them figure out a question, because you could think of a question and they could probably care less. So that brings them into what they would be interested in.
Yep.
And if anyone has family out there, whether it's a family reunion or not, or you're just going to visit, have your kids ask,
Hmm.
whether that child is 4 or 5 years old, or 13 or 15 years old, because it's amazing to me what their outlook was then versus what it was, what it was 10 years after that. They're older, you know, they looked at things differently when they were 5 versus 10. And
Mhm.
I've gathered that through the years, and now seeing what, he thought of back then when he's now 27. So, um, but yeah, good idea for family reunion, family gathering,
Yeah.
a visit,
Mhm.
um, or even if they're going on an unplanned excursion for a historical area, or a fun area where you live because you don't have family there, let them come up with a question,
Hmm.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
and I think that would engage them as well, and then they feel like they're a part of it.
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, I
And
always want
keeping,
that.
yeah, I was gonna say, and keeping not only kids interested and engaged, but asking them to participate, being in the planning or at the destination,
Yes.
and then making sure you find out, well, what do you want to know, are all great ways to make a boring family trip a little more exciting and lively.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, eh, and going to just a place that has nothing really to do with family history. It was just a family
Mhm.
vacation, and that ended up being the best family vacation, the one where every single one of us were totally engaged. It ended up being someplace fun, but it was also historical,
Hmm.
and bringing in the aspect. And then two, mom got 2 hours at a research facility.
That's
Ah.
always important.
Yes,
Yeah. Yes.
but bring him back in about an hour and a half, because I want him to rewind the microfilm or something like that. And so I would take him on day trips on research. And if anyone is out there that is part of teaching a genealogy class, take your kids with you. I took TJ, that's my son's name. I took him with me, especially if I didn't get particularly an honorarium for an event. Well, then he went with me because I didn't pay for a babysitter. And so um, it maybe have been a 1 hour portion of an all-day workshop, but
Hmm.
he was there right along with, and I still have it to this day, the sheets of paper, because I was teaching on census at a local workshop that day for a society. And part of the census material back then, I'll show my age, we had to explain sound X.
Hmm.
Ah.
Well, he sound X'd every one of his friends' names just by listening. I had given him
They
paper
do
to,
listen.
yeah,
They see they do.
and I gave him his own paper to, doodle or whatever with, but he was doodling, and he even lined out the vowels, and created
Oh,
the
that's
sound
cute.
X index for every one of his friends' names. And so he was there, and so take them with you. Um, take them with you to do research, but know that they have to have a library voice. But he went right along with me, and I guess he thought everybody, did that, or he thought everybody went on a picnic in the cemetery. Um, so, uh, but anyway,
Nope.
sorry about that.
No, you're good. Do you have anything to add, Sherry?
Just that I'm lucky that I do have some children that will come with me. So, and so I'm looking forward to school getting out so that because I will pull them out sometimes to come with me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
every once in a while. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the summer and being able to do more trips with them.
I have to say, I'm looking forward to my oldest turning the correct age so that he can actually go to the National Archives with me.
Oh, that will be
Awesome.
And get
great.
his own researcher card, which it's only a few
Yeah.
months off, which makes me really
I'm
old.
jealous you live close enough to be able to go.
Yeah, it's well, according to Google,
Hmm.
I'm just a little over, I'm between 60 and 70 miles to the National
That's
Archives. So,
great.
but
Yeah.
that's like 3 hours, right?
Yeah. Well,
Oh no.
what's traffic?
Oh, no, I'm thinking
Traffic.
60 miles. You can do that in an
No,
hour.
no,
Well,
traffic.
we have this thing
Oh,
called I-95,
oh,
otherwise known as the parking lot.
that's what I heard. I heard Michael Haight talk about that. Yeah, it's a parking lot. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's the
Oh.
I-95 parking lot, especially in the summertime when tourist season is heavy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but if you leave at certain times of the day, or you take the train, because I live
I
near
was gonna
one of
say take
the
the train.
Hmm.
yeah, I live near one of the VRE stations, which is the
Hmm.
commuter train. It'll make for a long day, but I'm guaranteed to get there in an hour and a
Right.
half.
Right.
Right.
As long as there aren't heat restrictions or something broken down or but I'm excited about that because that's going to bring a whole new level of us doing not only
Yes.
research together but family history excursions
Hmm.
in and
Hmm.
around the DC area.
Right.
By
My
and by the
daughter's
way, when
learning
they
to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Sherry,
Oh,
go
I was just
first.
gonna say my daughter is doing some indexing, and she's very, very excited that they're going to start offering it on a tablet versus, her laptop. And so
Hmm.
I think that's going to be a really, really good step forward to getting more of our youth involved.
Yeah,
Bring it to a level where they're very comfortable with doing.
Mhm.
yeah.
So I'm excited about that.
We must have ESP right on the same wavelength because I was going to say, you know your kids, you know which one is analytical, you know which one is
Hmm.
artistic or whatever. I knew from day one that, my son was into computers and he never ever wavered. And so I got him involved with the computer right away. And so even now he is still somewhat involved in the business and with website or hey, I need you to do this. You haven't shown me how to do that yet. I don't want to know how to do that. You can do it in 6 minutes and it would take me 6 hours. So bringing in that technology, and I had to crack up. And I have to share this with you because I'm sure there's others out there as well. He's got an iPhone and he downloaded an app and he sent me a picture of it. And I
Mm.
cracked up
Hmm.
because it was the new app that came out that day with Ancestry connected to Facebook.
Oh.
And so he had his picture and his dad and his mom. And then he had, pink and blue for grandma and grandpa on his dad's side and pink and blue for his grandparents on his mom's side. And look at this. And I said, great. You cannot put that online. It's copyrighted. I've got the book right here. So, but even now I get goosebumps because that wasn't that long ago. It was just recently, it seems like, and I get goosebumps because he was still engaged.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
Hmm.
so yeah. But yeah, you'll get the rolling of the eyes and stuff. But pick something,
Sure.
them. You know what they're like
Right.
and so forth. and I had to crack up at Shannon's thing when taking them to the conference and letting them pack their backpack and be part of the planning of, what session can they go to. You're really brave because I never ever would have done that. But
Well, I think it has to go to my husband and I, unless we have to find a sitter, it's the same as my parents, and for the most part, his parents too.
Mhm.
We take them everywhere with us. You, they're
Mhm.
not going to learn how to behave in society and in certain situations unless you
mhm,
expose them to that.
right.
And
That's true.
my oldest has made a point for, oh goodness, the last 5 years, stating how he wants to be a historian and he wants to
Oh.
learn about history and he wants to go to college and he wants to be a historian. And I figured, a conference would be a good way
Mhm.
for him to interact and to see what lectures are like and
Mhm.
what an
Absolutely.
exhibit hall, and it would be a good experience for him. Now, what was lucky was at that same time my parents were with me. So they attended FGS last August with me. So it was 3 generations together, which it got some interesting looks from some people, but it was a lot of fun. And I knew that one, my dad had to take an afternoon nap, and if my kids got tired, they could go
They
back to the
could.
hotel with him and meet me
Right.
later. So
Yeah.
And then
so I
he came to NGS as well, right? Because
My oldest was
yeah, I
at
met him there.
NGS. Yeah. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
May in Virginia is the beginning of standardized testing month. So I wasn't able to take them out of school because they would
Mhm.
miss important reviews. Virginia
Mhm.
has a thing called the Standards of Learning, SOL
Mhm.
Mhm.
exams, and you have
Mhm.
to pass them at the end. They're from third grade on. You take math, reading, history, science exams,
Mhm.
and he's actually getting ready to take his first one this week, I think Friday. So they've spent the last 3 weeks basically going over everything they've learned for the entire year. So teachers in
Wow.
Virginia, you don't miss school in May.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my
Wow.
kids weren't able to come for the whole conference, but yeah, my
Mhm.
oldest did show up for Saturday because he attended the youth camp. And then I was a room monitor for the 2 afternoon lectures, so he got to sit with me as I
So,
was a room monitor and work a
Yeah.
little.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings the point again to the forefront that we have taken them into the situation, into the environment, and they are a part of it. You don't have to, I couldn't send him to, I didn't want to send him to the babysitter. And
Right.
so he knew what a library was, he knew what the archives was. Everybody in the genealogy world in Colorado knew my son. And so now to find out, yeah, now he's bought his own house. He goes, "You mean little TJ?" Yes. So he was around that since he was, practically 2, and so and even on a trip, I wanted to take him. I had taken him out of school to go and celebrate his grandma's 90th birthday party. That and that was great because he could be a part of that. And then also in May, the same thing for my big birthday. Won't tell you which one, but I have this picture of him and his grandma doing math homework and together
Mhm.
because he had to bring schoolwork. And so now we're turning it into a family history, probably genealogy related, because then she goes into the stories of what it was like when she was in his
Mhm.
grade.
Mhm.
And look what fantastic information comes from that. I just get goosebumps because now he's learning what school was like back then
Right.
Mhm.
when they really had outhouses, not when I was in school. So, but living or hearing those stories and that information from when she was little.
Hmm.
Um, so and times like that, can't be replaced. They're just, it stops in time. So
Right.
Mhm.
Well, Sherry, it's almost time up for us, but do you have any last thoughts before we
Right.
go tonight?
Um, I think I really like the idea of researching where we're going, finding out what's going on there. If it applies to family, tell them the stories, that happened to your family. If not, find interesting stories, ghost stories, mystery stories, whatever will pique their interest. Let them help plan so that they will enjoy the trip and maybe you won't get so many eye rolls.
Do you have anything to add, Valerie?
I'd add bring pictures. Show
Mm.
have the pictures that go with those stories. That brings it to
Hmm.
life. Visually, and then let them pick some of the planning aspect. What questions do they want to ask, or what do they want to do, or that's still part of it too, so they can feel like they're a part of things.
That's great. That's
Hmm.
great. So one last thing, I just want to kind of recap what we talked about this afternoon. So with family history outings or any type of genealogy trip you decide to take with kids, Valerie and Sherry both had great points. Do your homework. Find out what your kids like to know. Find out what they might like to see. Make it relevant. Make it fun, and it should be a lot of a very good time for everybody. Some things I want to make sure people know about. Don't forget to check out guidebooks. I kind of mentioned the Washington, D.C. one. A lot of
Hmm.
large cities have guidebooks specifically geared towards families of different age groups. So you can check those out, and a lot of them are free online, or you can always go to a local bookstore or check out Amazon and see if you can find one there. The other thing you can do is what I mentioned earlier are the website destinations. See if the different places you'd like to visit have websites geared towards kids and so that you can prepare your children for what they'll see and what they'll do there. The other thing you might be interested in finding out is if you go to the In-Depth Genealogist website, they have a travel section. One of their columnists talks about heritage travel and travel with families, and Terry actually writes some of those blog posts as well. So check those out. If you just go to their blog and search for travel, you'll have a lot of hits come up. And then last but not least, do your homework. Make sure it's something y'all will like to do too.
And go ahead and drag them by the arm and let their eyes roll, because they will appreciate it at some point in time.
That's right. They'll thank you later.
Yes.
Later.
So, real quick before we leave this afternoon, I want to remind everybody that our next hangout will be the third Thursday, which is next month, June 19th, and it will be at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the June 19th hangout will be basics of a research notebook and how to modify it for different abilities and age groups. If you'd like to be on the panel, don't forget to register or send me an email and I will try to get you on there. We have a limited number of 10 people total, including myself. So get on there quick if you want to be on there. And I think that's it for today. Thank you for everyone for listening. Thank you, Sherry, and thank you, Valerie, for attending. I appreciated having
Thank
someone
you.
here to talk to.
Thank you, Shannon.
Appreciate it very
Uh,
much.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.